So for part three, we're looking at what's the future of buildings, both commercial and resi, and trends and so on. So I think what we'll start with first to tie in with part two was as a surveying firm or as a surveyor, are you seeing certain firms moving with tech much more effectively and driving benefits from that, or are you finding generally it's an area where surveyors still need to explore?
I think it's actually probably tilted towards more embracing technology and not. Definitely, like one
Yeah.
back 5 years ago, it was like a small minority of early adopters, but now I think it is more than 60% at least, which is fantastic. We've seen a lot of really forward-thinking, open-minded surveyors throughout COVID come find us, learn about our product, because they had the luxury and the time to do so, but then took that back to their clients and said, look, this is how we think we can improve our building. Obviously, surveying, quite a wide range of different roles within surveying. So the ones we tend to embrace the most are the agents. So showing off a first-class user experience, access with the app, showing off all the amenity the building has, how sustainable the building is. But then you've got the MEP surveyors who are looking at design, the engineers that are looking at the efficiencies, and so they're getting the data back out of the buildings and analysing that. And actually, as a designer, you've now got the ability to see whether your design played out how you thought it would. You can look at the historical data and say, right, actually, we projected this, but it's not actually worked like we thought. And so you're far more well informed for the future. And then you've got sort of the bit that sits outside of what we're doing so much, but valuations and so on. There's so many fantastic SaaS platforms out there that you can leverage to help with your calculations and so on. So yeah, I think you really are not going to survive in the future without embracing technology. You don't have to be necessarily passionate about it. I think those that are passionate about it will excel, but yeah, I think you can't ignore it. And I think embracing it, you'll certainly get a return on investment.
Just slightly off piece, but the valuation part you just mentioned, do you find that landlords that have, or property owners that have invested in smart tech and smart buildings, does those buildings generally have a high valuation at the end of it?
Yeah, they do. That's because they've leased. Yeah, it's because they've leased. What we're seeing, there's a correlation in our data across what level of smart you've obtained. So are you SmartScore Platinum, Gold, Silver, certified, and how much that building's leasing. And look, don't just think that it's our technology. It's not. It's because they've invested in every part of that building. It's platinum in its finishes. It's platinum in the way it's been designed. They've just really invested the time to think about it, make the product relevant, market it effectively. And so, yeah, those buildings are leasing. They're getting big. And, funny enough, you keep talking about flexible leases and stuff, and certainly that is growing enormously. But a lot of our big buildings in London have got 15-year leases. We've got one building that just got a 25-year lease, so there's still some really good clients out there willing to commit to these buildings. And so obviously that goes straight into the valuation. Some more interesting things we've seen is we had one building sell, and it had a SmartScore rating, a minimum it had to reach. It hadn't been rated yet, and it had sold mid-rating. We were the technology vendor, and they had to make a commitment to the new purchaser that it would be at least a gold, or they would pay to get it to a gold. And fortunately, we managed to get it through as a platinum. So the client buying it was chuffed, the client selling it was chuffed. But I've been talking about this a lot with my clients recently, and I genuinely think when people do due diligence in the future, they're not just going to want to ask for your accounts, your leases, and the length of the leases. They're going to want to look at occupancy data, and they're going to say, okay, this company might have this building for 25 years, but at best they're occupying it 10%. There's still a good chance they're going to want to leave or dispose of this asset. And I think that will start to become a must-have. It's not, oh, we don't have that. Sorry, we didn't invest in smart tech. It'll be, no, we must have that data. And so I think we're going to see the outcomes of smart technology in terms of the data sets come into investments and evaluations.
Yeah, I think that does make sense, actually, because it suddenly shows the value of that property in a very different light to just what people have paid in the past. It shows the engagement and the willingness to potentially stay on a longer lease and all that type of stuff. So
yeah. And a lot of our clients are already using this in their CRMs actively, especially on the flex market where the lease lengths are so much shorter. They will look at that data and say, right, we've leased this 30-person office and it's only ever got to 8 occupants, and it's got a break beginning of next year. we should probably go back, start talking to them now, because we could probably take that back for them, move them into a 10-person. They're happy. We've then got another 30-person office to put back into the market, rather than wait until they break and then, it's a bit too late because they've already committed to another location nearby. Having that intelligence and being proactive, it's really powerful.
My last question then on the surveyor side, because I know I took us slightly away from that, is if you're interested in learning more, whether it's about how smart buildings work or just the sort of AI side generally, because you mentioned about surveyors that potentially use AI and ChatGPT and will be 30 to 50% more productive than peers. Where's the best place to start with that? Because I think it can be quite daunting. You can log on to ChatGPT, create an account and ask it a couple of questions, but how do you move from there to to really driving the benefits and being able to start writing proposals through it and so on? Is there a good place to start?
Yeah, certainly. There's a guy called Anthony Slumbers who's an expert in this domain, and he runs a really good course for real estate professionals. And you would come out of that course with knowledge that you could deploy immediately and get the benefits straight away. So I seriously recommend that. The other thing I would, from the smart perspective, is become a WiredScore or SmartScore accredited professional. It's a very straightforward, accessible exam that you take. So it's a training course plus an exam, and it really helps you define smart and understand smart. And it would really, truly, both of those would give you a huge advantage with your peers out there. So that'd be my two key recommendations. Another one, if you're really seriously interested, we could arrange a tour of one of our buildings. So if anyone who's listened to this, obviously reach out to yourself. Me and Matt can take you around and showcase what buildings are like in real life.
Yeah, I think they're really good bits of advice there, because I think I've seen quite a few things in the past that says I should definitely learn more about this, but actually you get excited and you want to go and do it, and then it's like, where do I start? Suddenly it becomes quite a daunting minefield. So three nice places.
They're really two easy, measurable things that you'll get a return on, and and they're well-rounded courses on both sides. Can't recommend them highly enough.
Awesome. I'll take a look myself, I think.
Yeah, that should be fancy. Great.
I suppose my next topic within this is trends, I suppose. So under sort of what is the future of buildings, what changes are you seeing globally? Because you obviously mentioned that you're dealing with properties around the world, not just obviously UK. Are you seeing certain countries engaging with this much more and adapting it much quicker? Or is it sort of similar across the world?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think from an energy perspective, Australia has always been ahead of the UK. Obviously, the neighbours racing come from there. So there's a lot of technology around optimising the energy consumption of the building that's been around for a long time in Australia. But I think from a user experience perspective, the UK and especially London and a lot of the other cities, we're in Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol, but London has been the trailblazer there. And so we find that all of these clients we have internationally in the USA, across APAC, across mainland Europe, they're all coming here. They all come here to look at the case studies, how we've deployed the technology, and then they deploy it in their own countries. And actually, if they're quick enough, they tend to be the smartest building in their city when they take the technology home. But it will get commoditized over time, unfortunately. But we'll continue to invest in the next generation of smart technology to keep us ahead.
That's a good point. You said obviously they're quick enough; they'll be the smartest. So what's the length of time from saying I want to go ahead and implement smart building technologies and actually putting it in place? A slightly open question, because obviously it depends. Or how long is a piece of string? How much do you implement? But is there a typical time frame?
Yeah. Look, I think it does come down to what you have in your building. So if you've been really lucky and you've had a really good MEP designer that understands smart and he's put open interfaces throughout your building, he's got mobile compatible readers, a mobile compatible access control system, lifts, and so on. You could deploy this in a month. That's how quick you could do it. But you typically find you don't always get all of those systems. You'll have maybe the access controls capable, the lifts are closed protocol, so you need to get an adapter to make it open protocol. The same for the BMS. But certainly in our history of smart spaces, we've been really lucky. Where we've gone to the building, we do an analysis, we provide a report to the client saying, look, this is what you need to purchase for upgrades, and we've gone green, you're ready to go. And so that means we can deploy as quick as like 4 weeks into the cloud, and then you provide your training and you've got people utilising the platform.
Well, okay, that's fascinating. On that note, then, in terms of ease of deployment, depending on obviously what's in place, do you think all buildings will move this way eventually? So all commercial buildings, all residential buildings, or will it only suit a certain type of commercial building, for example? So is it something that will become mainstream everywhere?
Yeah, I think so. I think the cost of technology is coming down all the time, so that makes it open to more people. You're going to have to do it because you're going to not be able to operate a net zero building without it. So yeah, I really do think it will. I think it will become, and I think it's funny, people don't really refer to smartphones as smartphones anymore. I used that term today because I was referring back to 2008. But when we look at today, actually, I don't ever call that in my household. I go Wi-Fi past my smartphone. And so, yeah, I think smart will be baked into all buildings, and you won't even need to think about it.
It's interesting how that terminology has changed, actually, because I know my parents still talk about, I'll call you on the mobile, and I'm like, I don't differentiate between landline and mobile anymore.
No, I don't even have a landline anymore.
No,
which is crazy, yeah.
Well, it stops you getting sold Windows, which is good.
No, certainly, sadly. I mean, that's funny enough. One of my biggest bugbears at the moment is the amount of cold callers that we have across our phone system in the office, our 24-hour support desk out in New Zealand, our mobile phones. I've actually just gone for a therapeutic session of registering them all for like X directory, because it's actually killing us. Like, as the brand gets bigger, we're getting more notoriety, we are getting hounded. It's a distraction. Every day you're trying to drop this call. I mean, we like to think we're really friendly and polite at Smart Spaces. We don't just hang up, but then we're stuck on a call that's just distracting us. So yeah, certainly a big bugbear of mine, and probably the main reason I never went with the landline.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's interesting that that's changed, I think, as well. But yes, the rate of tech change generally has been fascinating. I suppose the I touched on it before. Is there a risk of a lot of this tech going obsolete and out of date, and is that why people don't necessarily potentially invest in it? Is that the main reason people won't go ahead, or are there other reasons behind it?
Yeah, I think we haven't seen a lot go obsolete. We've been quite fortunate. I think your biggest risk area will be sensors. I think sensors, depending on what they do, that's where you potentially, and what we've seen there is that, some sensors come into the market to do a specific thing, but then someone else has adapted an existing system to do the same thing, which means you've got consolidation. You don't need to enhance that with a sensor. So a case study there would be that people now use like the WebEx cameras to count people in meeting rooms rather than use a sensor. And so over time, you might say, well, yeah, I'm not going to buy a sensor anymore because my WebEx kit does that. So that's probably where we see that happening. But most overridingly, so it's a good case in point is like the new wallet technologies for accessing buildings. We can go back quite far with the existing reader technology, further than you would think. BMSs, we can go back 8-10 years, So yeah, some of the core systems, not so much, but some of the more innovative sensors, certainly there'll be disruption there. But the benefit there is the costs coming down all the time. So actually, what you start to think about then is more the sustainability angle and how these systems can be recycled. And fortunately, a lot of the providers now have methods for you to return the sensors, and you pay a subscription rather than actually just pay for the hardware. So the risk is reducing all the time.
It's something I've been saying, even with consumer goods, should be part of the process, which is when you pay for something, rather than it just being that's the manufacturer's end of obligation, that actually that they if they have to take things back, there's they care then about the whole life cycle behind something, whether it's an oven or whatever it might be, a sensor, whatever it is. I think my final question is around the security aspect of it, because there's two sides. There's probably the fear, and then there's the reality. So is there a fear that people have around security? Because you hear about things in the home in terms of like Internet of Things, IoT devices getting hacked and all that type of stuff. Is that a fear on the one hand? And my other part of it was actually going to be, I imagine on the other hand, it makes security better in terms of it's easier to revoke access to buildings via the app than it is trying to get hold of someone's card again, or stop people switching cards, that type of stuff. So is that what's the perception and the realities around security with these types of things?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the main thing is the design of the underlying systems that you're going to connect to the app. So I think where not enough attention's been paid to that in the past, that actually there's vulnerabilities. Even before you got anywhere near smart technology, there's a whole host of vulnerabilities in a building. And that could be a flat network where all your systems sit on one network. So if I pop a camera off and I connect to my laptop, I can turn all the plant off, or I can control the lifts. That, we've come across that in buildings, believe it or not. And so we've had to then get the design network redesigned and a contractor in to adhere to the security principles there. But then we've also seen that, plastic cards can be shared and you're enhancing security. So I think the element that Smart delivers is visibility of that. So you'll see whether you have those vulnerabilities. You can monitor them, you can monitor who has access, but then you can leverage things like multi-factor technology or biometric to further enhance the security. So certainly smart buildings are more secure, but you need to but security is paramount. And so one of our biggest investments in our business is cybersecurity.
Yeah, I can imagine that's the paramount part. But it's interesting, I think, because I can imagine there'll be some people that have the fear of, do you add more vulnerabilities in by going down that route? But actually, you forget that it doesn't mean there are none to begin with. You already have networks and systems in place that could or more likely to be unsecure as they are.
Yeah, because you're not monitoring them. Yeah, definitely. And every time we connect to a legacy building, we see that, weak passwords and so on. And like coming back to your IoT question, we'd never put an IoT sensor onto the corporate network. It always sits in a segregated network. We typically use communication protocols that wouldn't be able to communicate with other technology in your space. And LoRaWAN's a really popular technology for that. But it's a lot of it. Most of it goes into the architecture, and then it's the monitoring there afterwards.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we've obviously focused a lot on cybersecurity as well, and in terms of our business, and it's the big focus. But I think that often the realities and perceptions can be misaligned. Horror stories versus actually what goes on and how it can make things more secure.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed today's episode and going through the three topics. Thank you very much for coming on. If anyone wants to get in touch with you or Smart Spaces generally, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way is LinkedIn. We're ever present on LinkedIn. And so Smart Spaces is how you find us on LinkedIn. And then our website is smartspaces.app, where you can find out a lot of detail around our platform.
Yeah, it's a fascinating website. I'd recommend having a look. Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll have another chat in a few months' time and see how things have progressed.
Brilliant. Thank you. Cheers.